When I came back to my father's house, the first thing I noticed was the silence. The old wooden gate was still there, and it made the same soft sound when I opened it. I had not been home for almost 10 years, but everything looked almost the same. The trees were taller, the paint on the windows was old, and the garden was full of dry leaves. My father used to keep it beautiful, but he was too old now to care for it. I stood there for a moment, holding my small suitcase, and I thought about all the years I had stayed away. I came back because my father was getting weaker, and there was no one else to look after him. My mother died a long time ago, and my sisters had their own families far away. They all said I was the one who had time. The truth was, I did not have much of a life to leave behind. I was tired of living alone in the city, working in a job that did not make me happy. Maybe I also wanted a reason to stop running from my own quiet sadness. When I stepped inside the house, it smelled of dust and old memories. My father was sitting by the window, reading the same Bible he had read every morning of his life. He looked up slowly, and when he saw me, he smiled. His face was full of lines, but his eyes were still kind. He said my name softly, as if he was afraid I might disappear if he spoke too loudly. I went to him and kissed his forehead. His hands were thin and cold, but when he held mine, they still felt strong. He told me I looked the same, but I knew that was not true. I had changed in ways he could not see. The years away had made me quiet, maybe too careful with my heart. I helped him stand up and made tea. He asked about my job, my apartment, the city. I gave short answers. He could feel that I did not want to talk about it. After a while, he stopped asking and only watched me move around the kitchen. The air between us was gentle, but full of things we did not say. That night, I slept in my old room. The walls were still painted light blue, and the same bookshelf stood in the corner with my old school books. I touched them and felt a strange mix of comfort and regret. I could hear my father's slow steps in the hallway and his soft cough from time to time. The house had grown smaller, and yet I felt like a child again. I wanted to believe that coming home could fix something inside me, but I knew it was not that simple. In the morning, I cooked breakfast for my father. He said grace before eating, his voice thin but full of faith. After we ate, I cleaned the table and opened the curtains. The light came in softly through the windows. My father sat in his chair and looked outside for a long time. Then he said something that surprised me. "Your sister is coming home too." I froze. "Anna?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "She wrote to me last week. She says she wants to visit." I did not know what to say. Anna and I had not spoken in many years. She was the wild one, the one who always broke rules and made our father worry. She left home when she was 19, after a big fight with him. No one had heard from her for a long time, except for short letters that said she was doing fine. I wondered why she was coming back now. For the next few days, I cleaned the house carefully. I washed the sheets in Anna's old room and opened the windows. My father said nothing more about her visit, but I could see he was nervous. Sometimes he sat quietly, staring into the garden as if remembering old times. I wanted to ask him what he hoped for, but I was afraid to break the silence that was holding us together. Anna arrived one afternoon in early autumn. I saw her walking up the path with a small bag in her hand. She looked older, thinner, and tired, but there was still something bright in her eyes. I went out to meet her, and for a moment we only looked at each other. I wanted to hug her, but I did not know if she wanted that. She smiled a little and said, "You look different." I told her the same. It felt strange to hear my own voice saying her name again. Inside, my father was waiting in his chair. When he saw her, his eyes filled with tears. He tried to stand up, but she quickly went to him and put her arms around him. I watched them and felt something warm and painful rise in my chest. She sat beside him and began to talk, asking about his health, his medicine, his sleep. She spoke gently, almost like a nurse. It was not what I expected from her. I stood near the doorway, listening. That evening, we all ate dinner together for the first time in years. The three of us at the same table felt almost like a dream. My father spoke about old neighbors, the church, and the changing seasons. Anna asked simple questions, and I watched how carefully she listened to him. She had always been restless, but now she seemed quieter. I wondered what her life had been like all those years away, but I did not dare to ask. After dinner, when my father went to rest, I stayed in the kitchen washing dishes. Anna came to help me, and for a while we worked in silence. Then she said, "I didn't think I'd ever come back here." I asked why she did. She looked down and said, "Because I had nowhere else to go." Her voice was calm, but I could feel the sadness behind it. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about her words. I realized how much we were alike in some quiet way. We had both left home trying to escape something we didn't understand, and somehow we had both returned to the same place, hoping for peace. The house felt heavy with time and memory, but it was also the only place where we could still try to heal. In the days that followed, Anna and I settled into a strange rhythm. I cooked, she cleaned, and together we cared for our father. He grew weaker, but he was always gentle and thankful. Sometimes in the evenings, he told us stories from our childhood. He remembered every small detail, even things we had forgotten. Anna would smile, and I could see the girl she used to be, full of energy and laughter. But other times, she would grow quiet and distant, lost in her own thoughts. One afternoon, I found her sitting on the porch with her hands around a cup of tea. She looked pale and tired. I asked if she was feeling well, and she said yes, just thinking. Then she asked me if I ever felt sorry for leaving. I said yes, every day. She nodded slowly and said, "Me too." It was the first honest thing we had said to each other in years. I started to see that her return was not only for our father. It was also a kind of confession, a search for forgiveness. I didn't know what she had done or what she had lost, but I could see she carried some heavy pain. Our father seemed to know it too. He never asked her about her past. He only looked at her with love, as if forgiveness was already given. In the quiet nights when my father was asleep, Anna and I sometimes sat together in the dark living room. We didn't speak much. The house made small sounds, like breathing. I realized that silence can also be a kind of healing. It was not full of anger anymore, but of understanding. Still, sometimes I wondered how long this peace could last. The world outside our small house was waiting. Anna had no job, no plan. I had left mine behind. We were two grown women sitting in our father's house, learning to live again day by day, but for now, it felt enough. We were home. Before I continue with the story, please like, subscribe, share, and let me know in the comments where you are listening from. Your support means a lot. Now, let's continue. The days passed quietly at first. My father's health was weak but steady, and he was happiest when Anna and I sat with him in the evenings. Sometimes he asked us to read from his Bible, and sometimes he just wanted us to sit near him. I think he liked to listen to our voices, even when we spoke about small things like the weather or the garden. The sound of family in the house again seemed to make him calm. Anna and I shared the work without arguing. She took care of his medicine and sometimes sang softly while cleaning. I cooked and helped him walk around the garden when the sun was warm. The doctor visited once a week and told me to keep him comfortable. My father always said he was fine, but I could see that he was growing weaker each day. His hand shook when he lifted his cup, and sometimes he forgot what day it was. Still, he tried to stay cheerful. One afternoon, I found Anna sitting beside him, showing him some old photographs. They were from our childhood, yellow and soft at the edges. My father smiled at the pictures of us running in the yard or standing by the church on Sunday mornings. Anna pointed at one and laughed. "You always made me wear those awful dresses," she said. He smiled and told her she was a beautiful child. For a moment, it felt like the years between them had disappeared. But later that evening, I heard him coughing badly, and I remembered how fragile this peace was. At night, Anna and I talked more. She told me a little about her life after she left home. She said she moved from one place to another, working in small jobs and living with people who came and went. She never stayed long anywhere. When I asked if she was happy, she said she had been many things but not happy. I wanted to ask more, but I stopped myself. It was clear she did not want to explain everything yet. One evening after dinner, the air in the house felt heavy. My father went to his room early, and Anna and I stayed in the kitchen. She was quiet, washing the dishes slowly. I could see something was troubling her. I asked what was wrong. She said nothing at first, then looked at me and said, "I made a lot of mistakes." Her voice was low, almost a whisper. I waited. After a moment, she said, "There was someone, a man. I thought he cared for me, but he didn't. I had a child, and I lost her." She turned away and wiped her face with her sleeve. I didn't know what to say. My heart ached for her, and yet I was afraid to speak. She kept her back to me and said, "Father doesn't know. I don't want him to know." I nodded, though she couldn't see me. That night I could not sleep. Her words stayed with me, soft and painful like a wound that would not close. In the morning, I tried to act normal. I made breakfast and talked about simple things. Anna seemed calm again, but her eyes looked tired. Our father thanked her for the tea and told her she was a blessing. She smiled faintly. I wondered if he could sense the sadness in her, the way a parent sometimes feels what a child cannot say. He reached for her hand, and she held it gently. For a brief moment, it felt like everything between them was forgiven, even without words. Autumn grew colder, and my father's strength faded. Some days he slept most of the time. When he woke, he asked about the church. He missed going there, and I could see it troubled him. One Sunday morning, Anna suggested we have a small prayer at home. She found his old Bible and read a short passage aloud. Her voice was calm and warm. My father closed his eyes and listened. When she finished, he said, "That was good, my dear." I felt something shift between them, as if years of distance had quietly melted away. That afternoon, Anna and I sat on the porch. The trees had turned gold and red. She said she was glad she came back. I said I was too. We talked about our childhood, about the games we played and the times we were scolded. I told her I used to be jealous of her because she was brave. She laughed softly and said, "Brave or foolish?" I said maybe both. She smiled but then grew quiet again. She said, "I wish I could start again." I told her maybe she already had. In the next weeks, the house became quieter. My father hardly left his bed. The doctor said he might not have much time. Anna and I took turns staying near him at night. Sometimes he spoke in his sleep, calling our mother's name. Sometimes he said things we couldn't understand. Once he woke suddenly and looked at me with wide eyes. "Tell Anna," he whispered. "Tell her she's forgiven." I said I would, but he was already asleep again. I never told her those exact words. I thought she might already know. One cold evening, I found Anna sitting by the window. The lamp beside her was off, and she was watching the sky slowly darken. I asked her what she was thinking. She said she was afraid of losing him. I told her I was too. Then she said quietly, "I was afraid to come back because I thought he hated me." Her voice broke a little. "I thought everyone here would hate me." I told her that no one did, and she shook her head. "I hated myself," she said. I wanted to reach for her hand, but I didn't. Instead, I said softly, "You are here now." "That's what matters." She nodded and whispered, "I hope he knows I love him." That night, my father slept peacefully for the first time in many days. The next morning when I went to his room, he was still and quiet. His face was calm, and there was a small smile on his lips. I touched his hand, and it was cold. I called Anna, and she came running. She looked at him for a long moment and then knelt beside the bed. She did not cry loudly, only pressed her head to his chest. I stood by the window and looked out at the pale morning light. The world felt both empty and full at the same time. After the funeral, the house was too quiet. The people from the church came and went, bringing food and flowers. Anna and I thanked them politely, but their voices sounded far away. When the last visitor left, we sat together in the kitchen, both too tired to speak. Finally, Anna said, "I don't know what to do now." I said I didn't either. She asked if I would stay. I said I didn't know that yet. She nodded and said, "Maybe I'll stay a little longer." I was glad she said that. A few days later, I found an old letter on my father's desk. It was addressed to Anna. The paper was folded neatly and written in his slow, careful handwriting. I gave it to her. She read it in silence, and when she finished, she pressed it to her heart. I asked what it said, but she only smiled and said, "He knew." She did not explain more, and I did not ask. Whatever was in that letter was between them, and I could see it gave her peace. We started to clean the house together. We sorted through old boxes, photographs, and clothes. Sometimes we laughed at the strange things our parents had kept. Other times, we cried quietly when we found something that brought back too many memories. I began to understand that grief is not one feeling, but many small ones, arriving and leaving like the weather. One evening, we sat outside with 2 cups of tea. The air was cold, and the sky was full of stars. Anna said she wanted to find work nearby and maybe rent a small house in town. She asked if I would visit her. I said I would. I could see she wanted to build something new from the broken parts of her life. I hoped she would. She turned to me and said, "You know, I used to think home was a place you could never return to." She looked down at her hands. "Now I think home is where someone still waits for you, even after everything." I looked at her and said, "Maybe home is also where you forgive yourself." She smiled at me in the dark, and for the first time in many years, her smile looked real. We stayed there until the stars grew brighter. Neither of us spoke again. The house behind us was old and quiet, but it felt different now. It felt like a place that had finally let go of its sorrow. I knew we would both leave soon, in our own time, but for that night, it was enough to sit together in peace. After the funeral, the days began to move more slowly. The village felt empty without my father. The church bell still rang each morning, and I could hear the voices of people passing by the house, but inside, everything was quiet. Anna and I stayed longer than we planned because neither of us knew how to leave yet. It was strange to live in the same house where we were once children, now as 2 grown women who had both run away from something. Every morning I opened the curtains in my father's room and let the light in. The air smelled of old books and dried flowers. His Bible still lay open on the table as if he had only stepped out for a walk. Sometimes I sat on his bed and read a few lines. His handwriting filled the margins with small notes about faith, forgiveness, and patience. I read those words again and again, trying to understand what they meant to him, and maybe to me too. It was as if he had left quiet messages for us to find after he was gone. Anna began spending more time outside. She walked in the fields behind the house and sometimes sat by the river where we used to play as children. She said the sound of the water helped her think. I watched her from the window one afternoon, sitting on a stone near the water, her head bent low. For a moment, I saw the little girl she once was, brave and wild, running through tall grass with her bare feet. It hurt and comforted me at the same time. I realized that no matter how old we became, we would always carry those younger versions of ourselves somewhere inside us. One evening, she came into the kitchen while I was making soup. She looked tired but peaceful. She said she went into town to ask about a job at the library. I smiled. It was the first plan she had made since coming home. She said the woman there told her they needed someone to help with sorting and cleaning books. It was not much, but she sounded hopeful. I told her it was a good idea. She said she wanted to stay close, at least for a while. I nodded. I did not say it aloud, but I was glad she wanted to stay. That night after dinner, we sat in the living room together. The fire was burning softly. Anna said, "Do you ever think about what it means to start over?" I said yes, all the time. She looked at the fire for a long moment, then said, "I used to believe some mistakes could never be forgiven, but I think Father forgave me before I even asked." I said I thought so too. Then she said quietly, "Now, I have to learn to forgive myself." Her words stayed with me long after she went to bed. In the weeks that followed, small signs of change began to appear. Anna started her job at the library. She came home in the evenings with stories about the people she met and the old books she touched. Her voice had a new kind of calm in it. Sometimes she laughed, and it sounded like the laughter I remembered from years ago. The house felt different when she was happy. I continued taking care of things, cleaning, fixing, and slowly preparing myself to leave. I did not know where I would go next, but I felt that something inside me had softened. The anger I once carried toward my past seemed lighter now. One Sunday, Anna asked if I wanted to go with her to the church. I had avoided it since our father's funeral, but I said yes. When we entered, the pastor greeted us kindly. The same wooden benches and quiet air filled the space. The walls still smelled of old wood and candles. During the service, I looked at the light coming through the windows and thought about my father sitting there years ago, his head bowed in prayer. I could almost feel his presence beside us. When the music began, I looked at Anna. She was singing softly, and her face looked peaceful. I realized then that this was her way of beginning again. After church, we walked home together. The leaves were starting to fall, and the air smelled of rain. Anna said she wanted to plant flowers in the garden next spring. She said she thought our father would like that. I said he would. For the first time, we spoke of the future without fear. It felt like learning to breathe again after holding our breath for too long. Later that evening, I took out an old photo album from the cupboard. We sat side by side, turning the pages. There were pictures of birthdays, picnics, and winter mornings. Our parents looked so young in those photos, and so sure of everything. Anna touched one photo of our mother holding her as a baby. She smiled and said, "She loved us in her quiet way." I said, "Yes, she did." Then Anna looked at me and said, "Thank you for staying." I said, "We both stayed." She nodded and said, "I couldn't have done it alone." Her voice trembled slightly, and I felt my eyes fill with tears. I reached for her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. Days turned into weeks, and the rhythm of our lives became simple but steady. I started walking to the village every morning to buy groceries. People greeted me kindly. Some asked about my father, and I told them he passed peacefully. They said he was a good man, and I agreed. The more I spoke about him, the more I began to feel that he was not really gone, only quiet now. Like the house itself, there was something comforting in that thought. One morning, Anna surprised me. She said she had been saving some money and wanted to fix the roof before winter. It was a small thing, but it showed how much she had changed. She was thinking of the house as her own now, not as a place she was escaping from. Watching her talk with the repairman and plan everything made me proud. She looked strong again, not in the wild way she once was, but in a calm, certain way. That night, I walked alone to the end of the road. The air was cold, and the sky was full of stars. I stood there for a long time, thinking about everything that had happened. Coming home had not been easy. It had forced me to face memories I wanted to forget and to forgive things I did not understand. But it had also given me something I did not know I was missing. It gave me back my sister, and it gave me a way to feel close to my father again. I realized that sometimes we return not to change the past, but to find peace with it. The next morning, I told Anna I was thinking of leaving soon. She was quiet for a moment and then said, "I knew you would." Her voice was calm. I said I wanted to visit the city again, maybe find a new job, but I promised to come back often. She smiled and said, "You'd better." We both laughed. It felt good to laugh with her without sadness between us. Before I packed, I went through the house one last time. I stood in the kitchen, touched the table where we had eaten together, and looked at the chair where my father used to sit. I whispered goodbye softly. When I left, Anna walked with me to the gate. The air was bright and cool. She hugged me tightly and said, "Be happy." I told her, "You too." I walked down the road, and when I looked back, she was still standing there, waving. The house behind her looked small but alive, as if it was breathing again. I knew she would be all right. On the train back to the city, I watched the fields and trees pass by. I felt both lighter and older. I thought about how everything changes, yet some things stay the same. the road that takes you away can also bring you back. I took out a small photograph of my father that I kept in my bag. He was standing in the garden, smiling, his hat slightly crooked. I looked at it and smiled back. I reached the city by evening. The lights were bright and people hurried past me. For the first time, I did not feel lost in the crowd. I found a small apartment near the park and started looking for work. Life moved forward quietly. I wrote letters to Anna every week, and she wrote back. She told me about her garden, the library, and the new friends she was making. Sometimes she included a pressed flower in her letters. I kept them all in a small box on my desk. Months later, when spring arrived, I went back to visit her. The garden was full of color, and the house looked warm again. She met me at the door, smiling. There were flowers everywhere, and I could almost feel our father's presence in the sunlight that filled the room. We sat outside with tea, and she said, "It feels different now." I said, "It feels like home." She nodded. Neither of us said anything more. I realized then that coming home was not only about returning to a place, it was about finding yourself again in the quiet spaces where love once lived. It was about forgiving others and forgiving yourself. As the wind moved gently through the trees, I felt that peace at last. And in that moment, I knew that no matter where I went, home would never leave me. If you liked my story, please like, comment, and share. My name is Emily, and I am from a small town in Philippines. I was only 19 years old when I got married to a man named David. He was kind to me in the beginning, and my parents thought he was a good man. He lived in the United States, and after the wedding, I was supposed to go with him. I was scared. I had never been far from home. I had never taken a plane, and I didn't speak much English. I cried a lot before I left. I didn't want to leave my family, especially my mother. She was everything to me. We talked every day, and she always helped me when I was sad. She cooked for me, made me laugh, and gave me warm hugs. I didn't know how I would live without her. Before we moved, David stayed with us in our house for 3 weeks. He was quiet and didn't talk much, but I thought maybe he was just shy. After those weeks, it was time to go. I packed my clothes and a few pictures of my family. My mother gave me a silver bracelet and said, "This is to remind you of me. Stay strong, my daughter." I hugged her tightly and cried so much. She was crying too. I had never seen her like that. Saying goodbye felt like someone was pulling my heart out. We took the flight to New York. The journey was long, and I felt sick. My eyes were red from crying, and my stomach hurt. David didn't talk to me much on the plane. He looked out the window most of the time. I felt very alone already. When we reached New York, it was cold and windy. It was winter, and snow was falling. I had never seen snow before. It was beautiful, but I could not enjoy it. I was too sad and scared. David's father came to the airport to pick us up. His name was Mr. Collins. He looked serious and didn't smile. His wife, Miss Collins, stayed at home to cook, David said. We arrived at their house in New Jersey. It was small, dark, and very quiet. I went to my room and sat on the bed. My heart was heavy. I missed my home already. That night, I could not sleep. I kept thinking about my mother and father and my 2 younger brothers. I wanted to run back to them, but I couldn't. I was now a wife, and this was my new home. The next day, Mrs. Collins called me to the kitchen. She gave me a list of chores. Clean the living room, wash the dishes, cook rice, and don't be lazy, she said in a cold voice. I didn't understand everything, but I understood enough. I felt like a helper, not a daughter-in-law. I worked all day. My back hurt, and my hands were dry from the cold water. David didn't help. He just sat with his father, drank coffee, and watched TV. When I asked him if I could rest, he said, "My mom likes things clean. Try to do your best." Every day was the same. I woke up early, cleaned, cooked, and stayed quiet. I didn't know how to say no. I didn't know how to speak up. I was too scared to make anyone angry. Mr. Collins had a loud voice, and he shouted if I did something wrong. One time, I burned the rice, and he shouted so loudly that I cried in the bathroom for an hour. Weeks passed, and I started to feel more and more sad. I didn't laugh anymore. I didn't talk to anyone except David, and even he stopped listening to me. I missed my family so much. I wanted to call my mother, but David said the phone bill was too expensive. He told me I could call her once a month. I waited for that one call like it was gold. I cried when I heard her voice. I lied to her and said, "I'm fine, Mama. Everything is okay." But it wasn't okay. Nothing was okay. After 3 months, I found out I was pregnant. I was happy and scared at the same time. I thought maybe now things would get better. Maybe the family would be happy and David would love me more. But nothing changed. Mrs. Collins said, "Now you must work harder. A strong woman works even when she is pregnant." She gave me no rest. I worked with a heavy body and a tired heart. David still listened to his parents and never stood up for me. He didn't ask me how I felt. When I got sick in the mornings, he just said, "Take rest after the work is done." One day, I felt dizzy and almost fell in the kitchen. My hands were shaking and my head was spinning. I sat down on the floor and tears came to my eyes. I was so tired, so alone, and so scared. That night, I held my stomach and whispered to the baby, "You are not alone. I will protect you. I will be strong for you." The baby gave me hope. I started to dream about a better life. I wanted to learn English, get a job, and make money. I wanted to buy my own house where no one could shout at me. I didn't want to live under fear anymore. When the baby was born, it was a boy. I named him Ethan. He was beautiful, with big brown eyes and soft hair. I held him in my arms and felt strong for the first time. I thought, this is my son. I will protect him no matter what. But even after Ethan was born, Things did not get better. I had to take care of him all alone. Mrs. Collins didn't help me. She said, "He is your baby, not mine." David went back to work a few weeks later, and I stayed at home with Ethan. I didn't sleep much. I didn't eat well. But I kept going. I told myself, one day this will change. One day I will have my own life. At night, I still cried sometimes. I looked at the silver bracelet from my mother and held it in my hand. I whispered, "I miss you, Mama. I hope you are okay. I will be strong. I promise." The first year with Ethan was the hardest. I was always tired. I woke up many times during the night to feed him. In the morning, I still had to clean, cook, and do everything in the house. No one helped me. Sometimes I felt like I was not a person, just someone to work and stay quiet. Mrs. Collins never smiled at Ethan. She didn't want to hold him or play with him. She said, "Babies are noisy. Keep him quiet." Mr. Collins didn't say much. He just looked at me like I didn't belong. One night, Ethan was sick. He had a fever, and I didn't know what to do. I asked David to take us to the doctor, but he was watching a movie. He said, "He will be fine. Just give him water." I was scared. I held Ethan in my arms and cried. I stayed awake all night and prayed he would feel better. I missed my mother more than ever. I wanted to hear her voice, but it was not time for my monthly call. I sat in the dark with Ethan and whispered, "I love you, Mama. I need you." After that night, I decided something. I needed to be stronger. I could not wait for someone to save me. I had to save myself. I had to do something for me and my son. I looked in the mirror and said, "You are a mother now. You must fight." I started to look for ways to learn English. I found a small community center near our home that gave free English classes. I told David I wanted to go. At first he said no. "You're too busy," he said. But I didn't stop asking. After many days, he finally agreed, but only for 2 days a week. I was so happy. I went to class with other women like me, immigrants from different places, Mexico, India, Egypt, and more. I was shy at first, but I listened carefully. I learned how to say simple things like, "I need help," "I want water," and "My baby is sick." Every new word gave me power. The teacher, Miss Lisa, was kind. She always smiled and helped me when I didn't understand. She said, "You are smart, Emily. Keep going." Those words stayed in my heart. No one had called me smart in a long time. Slowly, I started to speak more English at home. David didn't care. He just said, "Do what you want." Mrs. Collins didn't like it. She said, "Why are you trying to be something you're not?" But I didn't stop. I was doing this for Ethan, for me, and for my future. After a few months, Miss Lisa told me there was a part-time job opening at a local bakery. I was nervous. I had never worked outside the house before. I asked David if I could try. He said, "You won't last 1 week." But I went anyway. The bakery was small, but warm and friendly. The owner, Miss P.'s Grace, was kind. She showed me how to serve coffee, bag bread, and speak with customers. My English was not perfect, but I smiled and tried my best. Many people were patient with me. I worked 3 hours a day while Ethan stayed with David or Mrs. Collins. I saved every dollar I earned. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I felt proud. I bought my own winter coat and a small toy for Ethan. Working gave me hope. I saw that life could be better. I started to dream again. I wanted to get a full-time job one day, maybe study something, and rent a small apartment for me and Ethan. I didn't want to live in fear anymore. But just when things were getting better, something bad happened. One evening, David came home late. He had been drinking. He walked into the house and started yelling. Ethan was sleeping, and I told him to be quiet, but he got angry. He shouted at me and pushed a chair. I was scared. I had never seen him like that before. I ran to the bedroom and locked the door with Ethan in my arms. I sat on the floor, shaking. I knew then that I was not safe. Not for me, and not for my son. The next morning, I told Mrs. Collins what happened. She looked at me and said, "You made him angry. Maybe don't talk so much." I felt my heart break again. She didn't care. She never did. A week later, things got even worse. David and Mr. Collins were arguing about money. I stayed quiet in the kitchen, holding Ethan. Then Mr. Collins walked up to me and said, "You can leave if you don't like it here. But the boy stays." I froze. What did he mean? I said, "I'm his mother." He replied, "This is David's family. The boy stays with us." My legs felt weak. I thought I might fall. I said nothing and walked away. That night, I cried and held Ethan close to my chest. I whispered, "No one will take you away from me. I will never leave you." I called my mother that month and told her everything. I cried and cried. She cried too. She said, "Come back home, Emily. We will help you." But I couldn't leave. Not yet. I had no money, no place to go, and no way to take Ethan out of the country without David's permission. I was stuck. Still, I didn't give up. I kept going to work. I kept learning English. I saved more money, little by little. I watched videos, read simple books, and practiced speaking every day. Miss Lisa helped me fill out papers to apply for a legal residency card on my own. She said, "You're doing great, Emily. Don't stop now." At the bakery, Mrs. Grace offered me more hours. I started working 5 hours a day. I bought a second-hand phone with my own money and started talking to other women at work. I learned about support groups for women like me. For the first time, I started to feel stronger inside. I still lived in that house, and I still had to be careful. But I knew I was not the same girl who arrived in New Jersey 1 year ago. I was growing, learning, and getting ready. Every night, I held Ethan and whispered, "One day, we will have our own home. One day, you will smile every day. I promise." 2 years had passed since I first came to the United States. Life was still hard, but I was different now. I was not the quiet girl who cried alone every night. I was still afraid sometimes, but I had learned how to stay strong. I had a small voice, but I had started to use it. Ethan was now 2 years old. He could walk and say little words. He loved to laugh and run around. Every time he smiled, I felt like I could keep going. He was the light in my dark world. At the bakery, I had become one of the trusted workers. Mrs. Grace gave me more hours and even let me help with simple paperwork. I still didn't speak perfect English, but I had improved a lot. I could now speak to customers, ask questions, and understand most things. I also started meeting other women from different countries. Some of them had stories like mine, young mothers, living with people who didn't treat them well. We began to talk and share. One woman named Maria became my good friend. She told me, "You are not alone. You are doing better than you think." One day, she told me about a support group for women in my situation. They met every Saturday in a small room behind a local church. I was nervous, but I went. The room was full of women, some from Asia, some from Africa, some from South America. They were all strong in their own ways. A kind lady named Helen led the group. She spoke slowly and listened carefully. I told my story for the first time. I cried and my voice shook, but no one judged me. They nodded. They understood. After that, I went to the group every week. I started to feel stronger inside. Helen helped me find a free legal aid service. They told me my rights and helped me understand the law in the United States. They said, "No one can take your child away. You have the right to feel safe." That night, I thought about everything that had happened. The shouting, the cold looks, the fear, the silence. I asked myself, why do I still stay quiet around them? Why do I smile when I feel broken inside? Then, something inside me changed. I knew it was time. Not to run, but to move forward. With help from Helen and the legal aid group, I applied for a small apartment for low-income mothers. It was in a safe neighborhood, close to the bakery. I saved enough for the first month's rent. When the time came, I packed my things while David was at work. I took my clothes, Ethan's toys, and my mother's silver bracelet. Mrs. Collins was in the kitchen when I left. She didn't stop me. She just said, "You'll come back. You need us." But I knew I wouldn't come back. My new apartment was small, but it felt big to me. It had 2 rooms, clean walls, and a window that let the sunshine in. I laid a mat on the floor, placed a blanket for Ethan, and sat down. I cried. But this time, I cried because I was free. At first, it was not easy. I had to cook, clean, work, and take care of Ethan all by myself. But I was used to that. The difference was, now I had peace. No one shouted at me. No one made me feel small. In this space, I could breathe. One day, I got a letter from home. My mother had passed away. My heart broke all over again. I cried for days. I remembered how she told me to stay strong, how she gave me the bracelet, how she always believed in me. I felt guilty that I didn't visit her, that I didn't call her more. But then I remembered her. Her voice. "Be brave, my daughter." I held Ethan close and whispered, "I'm sorry, Mama. I'm doing my best." After that, I promised myself something. I would live fully for my mother, for Ethan, and for me. Months passed. I continued working and saving. Ethan started going to a small daycare for a few hours while I worked. He made friends and learned new words. I watched him grow, and I felt proud. One day at the bakery, Mrs. Grace said, "You've come a long way, Emily. You should think about managing this place one day." I smiled. I still didn't believe I was that strong. But maybe I was. David tried to contact me a few times. He called and said, "Come back. Ethan needs his father." I said no. I was kind, but clear. "You had your chance. I'm doing what's best for us now." I still feel pain when I think about the past. I still cry sometimes, especially when I remember my mother. But I don't cry from fear anymore. I cry from healing, from remembering, from growing. Some days are still hard. But now when I wake up in the morning and see Ethan sleeping beside me, I smile. I get up, make tea, and start my day. This is our life now, simple, honest, and ours. I am not rich. I don't have everything, but I have peace, I have freedom, I have a son who loves me, I have friends who support me, and I have myself. And that is enough. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and share. More emotional and inspiring stories are coming soon.